All right, we're good to go here on the feed with our last and certainly not, our last guest for today. Someone you may recognize. My first opportunity to meet you, Galen. Welcome to the feed.
Oh, thank you. Great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. Now, I'm not sure you do a lot of podcasts or guests on podcasting. Is this something new to you?
It is. It's pretty new to me. I've done one. I did one for the Business Council of Canada probably 6 or 8 months ago.
Right.
But yeah, I generally try and avoid these kinds of interviews.
Well, I'm really thankful you take time to sit down with us here today. Now, let's flip the coin a little bit. What's your diet? How do you consume media? What's your buffet? Like, how do you keep up with what's happening around the world? Do you listen to podcasts? Yeah. Or you subscribe to Substack? Or
I get most of my news from TikTok.
Okay.
No, I don't. I don't. My kids definitely get most of their news from TikTok. I'm a voracious reader,
okay.
And so I'm signed up to the news feeds, major publications, the Financial Times, Apple News, Wall Street Journal, the things that you would expect. I subscribe to The Economist, which I'm a big fan of.
Do you ever get to actually
magazine.
read them? Because every time I subscribe, they just seem to stack up.
No, they are. They're building up on the. Weekly is a high frequency level for any publication, but it's a great magazine.
Let's talk about the time we're living through right now. Like, I spent 7 years at Hudson's Bay, and at Hudson's Bay, we've had leaders who would come in, typically from the U.S., and go, "This must be great. You're Canadian. That must work fantastic for you. It's a great advantage." And we would say, "Yeah, not so much, really." But we seem to be living through a time today of another time of disruption. So we just finished one time of disruption, the COVID era. We're arguably in another time of disruption. Let's call it the Trump era disruption, whatever we're living through. How do you think of that as a Canadian business and as a Canadian operator? Canada seems to matter now more than it did before, both patriotically, I would say, but also commercially. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, it's been an extraordinary swing, from, let's say, especially in our industry, where we were 18 to 24 months ago, where with the cost of living, being, the central issue for the Canadian consumer, particularly the price of food, rising at a really startling rate. The grocers and the food industry as a whole, were, I don't want to say targeted, but identified, as a problem industry. And I think one of the challenges we have in the private sector these days is that there's a perception with very, very many Canadians that any company that is successful, that is growing, or is making a profit, is probably doing it either at the expense of the consumer or at the expense of their colleagues or their employees.
Is that you've been operating in this country for many decades. Is that a uniquely Canadian thing? Do you see it anywhere else in the world where they don't champion their own companies?
Well, I think it's disproportionately the case in Canada. I think we're known for that culturally as not being great at celebrating our own success stories. We often prefer to sort of tear them down than to build them up. But truthfully, I think it's a sentiment that is increasingly prevalent all over the world. This idea that there's been incredible divergence, between people who have been successful and created personal wealth or corporate wealth at the expense of a huge portion of the global population that is not materially better off than they were 20 years ago. So it's a sort of real condition. I think the challenge that we have to navigate through is actually it's the private sector and all the folks in this room in our industry who are responsible for generating the growth, for realizing opportunities, and for driving prosperity. And so we have to change the narrative in some way and get our customers and the wider population, the politicians in the country, to understand a little bit more the positive impact we have and how much more we can do to drive prosperity in the country.
You were chatting earlier about 18 months ago, 24 months ago, you got to take a few train rides to Ottawa once or twice. Now, there is this perception that we're not a competitive grocery market, but we know that, from a global perspective, we have two of the biggest global players operating in our market. But it seems to be often that we're talking about, the three major grocers. Why do you think that is? And give us some insight in how you think about the competitive set and its reflection in the community and in the polity.
Yeah. Well, I think Deanne is in the audience. Michael Graydon's in the audience. They both know that Canada has the highest penetration of foreign ownership in the grocery industry in the G7. And not only is that true, but Walmart and Costco, who are the second and third largest grocery retailers in the country, are two of the biggest retail companies in the world. And so there is this narrative about too much concentration in the Canadian industry. It's not true.
Right.
And
I'm sure
and
it doesn't feel that way to your buyers on a day-to-day basis. It's easy going and there's not a lot of
Well, the other thing
competition.
that's amazing is Canada's a deregulated market when it comes to food retail, and which means anybody can come into Canada and do whatever they want in terms of opening a store and ambitiously trying to compete. Walmart and Costco, not only are they two of the biggest retailers in the world, but they are also value retailers. Their singular focus is to deliver great value to customers every day of the week. And the Canadian retailers are competing successfully, effectively against them. I think that's a cause for celebration and recognition, as opposed to one that refers to. I remember having a conversation with a minister last year saying, well, if we can get the big three Canadian grocers aligned, then we'll deal with the little guys. And I was like, well, who are the little guys? Oh, like Costco and Walmart. And I was a bit sort of taken aback by that, as you can imagine.
You're not often lost for words, but I imagine you would have been lost for words in that context. I want to hone in a little bit on you as a Canadian operating in Canada and how you look at the business maybe differently with your background and just as a Canadian citizen. Again, in the time we're in, but over the course of time, I think there's an operating model that is unique to Canadians. And how do you think about that?
Oh, look, I'm a huge believer in Canada. And in part, that's because, as a business, our prosperity, our success is inextricably linked with the prosperity and the success of Canada. If you're a family business, like we are, and we're now comfortably in our fourth generation of family leadership, it gives you a sense that we really do try and think in decades. We try and think in generational terms, not by quarter, or not even by year. It means the way that we make decisions is a bit different, I think, to organizations that make decisions in a much more short-term way. And so the social and economic trends, over decades matter to us. The demographic trends, of course, you heard from Frank earlier today talking about multiculturalism, the economic, strength and prosperity of the country. These are all factors in the way that we think about investing in the country. And we're optimistic, and want to continue to invest in Canada and do so in a way that strengthens the fabric of the nation.
I think it's that timeline, that framework that you approach it with, that long run framework, that it feels like you're best able to handle disruptions like the COVID era and whatever era we're living in now. Do you find the organization has greater resilience after the past number of years and are more than ready to take on that challenge?
Well, I think we've all developed a lot more resilience, over the last, call it 5 years. It's been quite a journey. COVID, was a crisis that challenged all of us, to do just about everything in our business models differently, and we came through that, and then we were faced with, an extraordinary period of let's call it runaway inflation, where we all had to recalibrate in another, significant way. And now, just maybe a short year and a half later, we're dealing with, the destabilization of the sort of global trade system, in an industry which is extremely global, certainly in terms of the way that we source product and the way we source ingredients and inputs for what we manufacture here. And so we're getting better at it, and we're building resilience into our systems, and we are, we're going to have to work through yet another challenge, and I think we have to be optimistic. We have to look for ways to turn these challenges into opportunities. We need to find ways of using them to make our businesses stronger. And I think for the Canadian manufacturers here today, whether you're an international business with Canadian manufacturing operations, or whether you're a smaller Canadian business, the time is now, for us to lean into the consumer demand for Canadian products and the recognition that as a country, we need to be more resilient. And there's a lot we can do better, and we need to invest in productivity, in innovation, and all the things that represent the foundation of growth in Canada.
Last question for you. As a business leader, as a business planner, I was reflecting on some of the things I heard on the stage about how far out to plan, but at the same time be agile enough to flex to what is a fairly uncertain environment, any given day, but particularly now. What's your advice to the executives listening and today with us around how to plan their business in such a dynamic, disruptive time? How do you approach it?
I think many years of experience, many years of learning through mistakes, getting things wrong, and I remember saying to my sister once, in a particularly challenging period for the business, she's sort of like, how do you get up in the morning and you sort of deal with it? And I said, well, sometimes you just get up, and sometimes you just get up. You get up, you get out of bed, you put
one step at a time,
one foot in front of the other, and that's true. We've learned, again, say over the last 5 or 6 years, that there are waves of challenges, and then there are more waves of challenges, and there isn't really a period where things calm down. There isn't a period of stability that you can count on anymore, which means you have to be resilient, you have to be flexible, and you have to be okay with making adjustments in real time.
Do you feel like Daniel was reflecting on the stage, this acceleration? Like if you reflect back 10, 20 years ago, the changes are happening faster. Do you feel that as a business? You've got both the opportunity to sit back and plan and think long term, but at the same time, things seem to be happening at an accelerated rate. Do you feel that tension between those two things?
I do. I think food is a uniquely positioned industry when it comes to the impact of technological change, because we still make and sell food. You can't turn that into a digital bite. We can improve the productivity of what grows, and comes out of the ground, but it still takes time for a potato, to turn from a seed into a harvestable product, and that's the same with every, core ingredient. If you're in the distribution business, as we are, you still have to move physical products on trucks from one place to another. And we do it at very, very low margins. So the level of efficiency that is already built into the value chain in food is extremely, extremely high. So the opportunity to bring technology to bear in a way that completely disrupts the business model, I think is far less likely than it is in your industry, the media business. And that should give us some sense of comfort and recognition that our world is not going to be completely turned upside down overnight.
People are still shopping in your stores the way they did when you and I were growing up. By the vast majority, people are buying in different mechanisms, but they're still buying in stores, and a great store experience still matters quite a bit.
So having said that, the application of this new technology and the added benefits that it can bring, whether it's around personalization, as you heard from Danny this morning, or whether it's AI agents who are able to provide incremental labor to improve productivity in the way that we produce.
Endless interns, I've heard them describe that.
Yeah, endless interns. These are very real advantages, and we are moving extremely quickly trying to figure out how those assets can be brought to bear to improve our customer experience. We have, I saw just this week, a really amazing artificial intelligence co-pilot that supports store managers in the way that they absorb information about what's happening in their stores, the way that it coaches them on something as specific as, this colleague working at the cash, last week, Susan, she got 3 compliments, from customers filling out their customer sat forms. You should go and, tap her on the shoulder and say, great job.
Right.
All drawn from existing form-based data that is now being processed and presented to a store manager in an eminently customer-friendly, user-friendly, digestible way that focuses not on data but on the insights that can be generated from it. These are profound changes that can, that will make us substantially better at what we do.
It is truly a big unlock on the shop floor, right? Being able to so much information, binders and binders of it, but actually filter down to something as meaningful as celebrating.
You remember what it was like. We were trying to get people to focus on 5 things, managing a store, but there's 5,000 things, that they're actually responsible for, every day. To have that kind of support, making sure that you know what you should care about at on any given day of the week. It's really, high potential.
Interesting days ahead, Galen. Thanks so much for joining me on the feed. I hope your podcast experience was a good one.
That's good.
So we can hear you more on in this medium. And thanks again. Let's hear it for Galen. And that's a wrap on the feed. So thanks everybody for listening, and you'll be able to listen to all the interviews and back for the show.
Good. Thank you.